Welcome to this episode of Parenting for the Present. Today, we are talking about a topic that every single parent in our audience has lost sleep over, literally. Whether you are in the newborn trenches, the toddler bedtime battle, or still wondering why your 4-year-old ends up in your bed at 2 a.m., today's conversation is for you. Our guest is Mary Cantwell. She's a certified pediatric sleep consultant and the founder of Rest to Your Nest, right here in the DFW area. Mary trained with the world-renowned sleep consultant Deborah Pedrick. Hope I said that name right.
You did.
And
You said
earned
it right.
and earned her certification through the Family Sleep Institute after completing over 250 hours of coursework. That's a lot of coursework. Three
Yes.
times more than apparently any other program. Mary has been recognized multiple times as a DFW Child Best Sleep Specialist, has been featured on NBC, WFAA, and the TOT. I feel really embarrassed as a pediatrician not to know what the TOT is, but I'm sure you'll tell us. And has helped families across the country and around the world finally get the rest they need. Um, so, just a disclaimer, Mary and I may know each other because I think this is, Mary, if this is not HIPAA compliant, sorry, but I do take care of Mary's kids. So I've known the Cantwell family a
You,
long time and just enjoyed our journey together. That's what's fun about being a pediatrician is watching your kids grow up. When I send parents to Mary that are stressed out and sleep deprived and just losing their marbles, she meets them where they're at. And I think that Mary's story is really interesting because she's been where a lot of our listeners are. She was once the exhausted, sleep deprived new mom, felt like she tried everything. Apparently, her pediatrician's advice wasn't so good. And so that journey is what led her here. Before I welcome Mary and let her tell us about herself, I just want to warn the listeners, especially anybody watching on YouTube, that you may witness your first Royal Rumble here on Parenting for the Present. Your trusty co-host here have some differing views on sleep. You know, we might have some people more in the Ferber corner. We might have some people more in like the gentle sleep training corner. We'll see how that works out. I just wanted you to know beforehand. So if you need to turn your video off, please feel free to. Mary, welcome. Can you start by sharing a little bit about your own story, what motherhood was really like for you in those early days, and how that led you to this really important work that you're doing now?
Absolutely. To me, this is my calling, and I really feel had to go through a lot to understand that was my calling. And I call myself a recovering type A. I am a type A. Before kids, I was super type A. Give me something to do. I will checkbox it. I will get it done. And kids aren't that way at all. And I read everything. I felt like I was prepared. My son got here and he did go by the book as a newborn. Expectation, he was up a lot. That was normal, but it kept going, right? Where he's 5, 7, 8 months old. I still feel like I have a newborn. And that was really hard mentally. It was hard on our marriage. It was really tough. And I was always able to problem solve everything. I couldn't problem solve this. And the more I tried to go by the book, the worse it got, in my opinion. And I feel like I had probably some postpartum anxiety now looking back, that I felt like the more out of control I felt, the more I tried to control it. And that anxiety just kept bubbling up, and I tried to keep pushing it back down by, hey, just trying to like get my hands around it, control it. And part of my story, and I know you're not supposed to talk about religion, but this is part of my story, is he's 9 months old. I come home. I have not been with him all day. I picked him up from daycare, get home, I hand him my husband, and I just like, I need a break. And I went outside. It still makes me shake because it was such a moving moment for me. I went outside and I prayed. And I said, I need a sign that I'm supposed to be his mother. I feel like I'm a bad mom. I don't know what I'm doing. Why did you give him to me instead of somebody else? Those are things you're not supposed to say, right? But it's all the things I felt. And I promise you, I'm not crazy. I kind of got this like tingle through my body, and I heard, I heard a voice that said, "You are his mother. Go back inside. You've got this." I'm be honest, I really don't know what happened over that week, but Holy Spirit, whatever, things came together. I let go. It was such a moving moment that I felt like I could be a mother. I actually enjoyed it. I did not like it. And I know you're not supposed to say that, but I really had a hard time. And I was angry all the time because I was exhausted all the time. And whenever we started sleeping together, oh my God, our life has changed like so different from my patience for things with my son. I liked my husband again. We weren't nice to each other. So it was just a very big change in my life that I started kind of sharing with friends, and it just moved into this passion.
I think it's interesting, Mary, and you said I'm going to disagree with you, so I'm going to start the rumble early. So, Mary, I think you
Woohoo!
are supposed to say it. I think if you feel it, I think you say it because I don't know a mom that I've worked with, and maybe less dads, but I don't know a mom who was a really good mom who said to me at some point in working with them, I don't think I'm a really good parent. I think we all have felt
Yeah.
that, and I think certainly when you're postpartum, when you're exhausted, when you have a kid who may have a harder temperament. We have four
Yes.
kids, and two of them I would say were easy on the sleep side, and two were not easy on the sleep side. And that was about the time when Eve and I met, and she and I had differing opinions in terms of how to help one of our children. And
Okay.
I won't talk about the story in because Eve was right, but we won't talk anymore about that. But I think it's really important to acknowledge, I mean, those feelings that we have, I think just expressing them, really critical in terms of regulating them.
And it's hard, especially, being that mom where you're dealing with the postpartum, you're dealing with the hormones, and if you're breastfeeding, and then everybody has an opinion, and then the doctor
Yeah.
says to do this, and if you don't have that mental health support, and then if you're looking at your husband, you're like, can you just do something? And for me, I really landed on, maybe sleep isn't that battle to be won if we're all sleeping and getting some sort of quality sleep. So I just think that it is kind of unfair from the mom's perspective to have so much pressure and so many
Yeah.
duties when like you're still healing. And sleep
Hmm.
is the thing. I did not have one of those unicorn babies that everybody talks about. Mine didn't sleep well. So I don't know that journey.
I think that Matthew, Eve's going to want you to go back and say that she was right again, just so we
Yeah, I
have
didn't
that
hear it the first time. What was that?
right. Yeah, she can't quite hear you. So, Mary, like when you meet a family, how do you, and this is what I've heard feedback from my families is that Mary really met us where we're at. So, I think that there is evidence that, well, let me back up. Can we say, as we usually do on this, that every kid's different? I think there's evidence that whether you choose more of a graduated kind of gentle crying out method or you go more with the gentle sleep training, however we want to determine that there's not a one size fits all
Correct.
recommendation, and really it's about what works for the family. And your kid is going to be okay. They're not going to be scarred at 16, depending on what sleep method you chose. So how do you meet the families where they're at?
So I think this kind of, you've said this a little bit of how my thought process is when I talk to families. I'm really trying to understand what their family dynamic is, right? This is not just about the child. This is our family, right? And that looks different for different people. So I always kind of kind of let the first thing come out is like whatever is working for your family and it works and you're sleeping and it's sustainable, no one should tell you that is wrong. That's just kind of how I feel that if you are independently sleeping in a crib and that works for your family, then that works for your family. If we are sleeping, co-sleeping and it works and everybody's sleeping fine and it's safe, we can do that. The thing is, when it's not sustainable, is where we need to change it. Now, how do we find that middle ground that works where we need to change, right? Pattern changes are hard. I don't care if you're 50 or 5, they are hard. But how do we make sure the brain is aligned to hear the information we're trying to tell it, right? Behavioral changes, but make sure the brain is hearing us to take those changes, and then what are parents going to feel they're comfortable with and what is sustainable? And we also got to consider the child. There's some children that their personalities prefer certain things, right? And how we respond. And some don't want that. So, how do we find that good median of what works for the child and then what is going to work for the parents? Because the parents aren't comfortable, they're not going to be consistent and it's not going to work, right? This is going to end up hurting the kiddo if we can't agree. So, how do we agree somewhere that works for both parents so that we can give the information to the child so they can learn it?
How do you, when you have parents that are mismatched with a baby's temperament, and for you, it's
Yes.
clear that, like, okay, this child needs, more regulation and high attunement, but the parents are like so rigid and unable to be flexible. How do you reconcile those two things for the benefit of the baby?
So I look at, whatever we are doing, whatever that response is that we are doing, but isn't working before we work together. I kind of try to put it around education, right? What is happening right now when they are not sleeping? Yes, are we working through the response that makes sense to us, but the child is not sleeping? Their cortisol levels are really high because they are so sleep deprived that even with the methods that we're doing, the responses that we are doing, they are still upset sometimes, even when we are doing that, and they're sleep deprived. So cortisol levels just kind of keep filling up. So we need to look at a different way to bring those cortisol levels down so that the child can actually fall asleep. So we kind of I try to educate on like, hey, what we are doing is working in the sense of like for us, and I look at our children are a reflection, right? We sometimes reflect what we think we want to do based off of what we think is the right thing, but we also have to reflect and look, is this going to be the right thing for our kiddo? And for my own personal, my oldest, he is a kiddo that wants to get things done on his own. He will come to me when he needs help. He has been this way since he probably came out of the womb. As a first time mother, I did not hear that and understand that because I'm an Italian. We love and hug you and squeeze you till you pop and you know we love you. My son is, I always call him drive-by hugger. Like we know he loves, but he wants to figure it out on his own. I needed to look and reflect on myself to be like, hey, he needs something different than what maybe I wanted to do as a mother. And that's hard. That is really hard to reflect back and be like, this is not my reality of what I wanted, but it's what he needs. It's like a really long-winded answer, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I love the way you answered that. And as you were saying that, something else came to mind. I remember that newborn phase, not with my 5-year-old because it was COVID and like nothing was
Yeah.
normal.
Yeah.
But I remember the one thing that kept coming up with my older two was this concept of self-soothing. Your kid needs to learn how to self-soothe. Can you kind of talk us through what does that actually mean? What does that actually look like? And what are your thoughts on the concept of self-soothing for a baby?
So for like self-soothing, self-settling, I look at this that is they can put themselves to sleep with something besides their parent, right? Whatever that means. That's sucking their thumb. Some kids like to like rub their face when they go to sleep. And I put things in places that make sense to me, right? Where I know they're developmentally different than we are at our age, but how we fall asleep, we like things a certain way when we fall asleep. We like a certain pillow, we like it cold, we like it warm. Kiddos will like some way of falling asleep, and that self-settling is going to be what gets them there, right? Some kids will need rocking to sleep. Some might just need like some space. My son needed a little bit, he needed me a little bit, but if I was there too much, he's like, get out, you're here, you've already done it. Please leave. So that little, that little that a child might need, and then stepping back to give them that time to put themselves to sleep. Because sometimes in a way we get in the way without realizing it. So kind of letting them self-settle and unwind to be able to fall asleep with it. And that could be so many different tools.
Well, and I love that you even incorporated okay, maybe they do need you to rock because I feel like somewhere along the way, the concept of self-soothing just meant like, no, your journey, not mine. So I love that, like, you did incorporate that and recognize like there is a level of co-regulation that can be a part of that plan too.
It can be, and a lot of families I work with can also, their child has never slept by themselves, right? They've never been in a crib. They have never not been with a parent. And going from that to, hey, here's your crib, good luck. There's got to be a transition. And I have different transition plans, I guess you could say, because they have to be aware they are leaving you and going somewhere else, right? That has to happen for the rest of it to work. But we have to give a different transition plan from if you've been with a body next to a body or being held or nursed to sleep to you're awake and here's your crib. That's really hard. So, how do we get them to that place where they can start that self-settling process?
As you were talking, I was thinking about, when I was a younger dad, like you, type A, a lot of dads are fixers. We want to do things. And I think um, some of the strategies that we would resort for our children that were harder to get to bed were putting them in the car seat when they were tired, driving them around. And as we think about what you were talking about with cortisol, what it did for me is I felt like I was doing something to fix the problem, and we were disentangling kind of the dynamic of go back to your room, go to sleep, go to sleep. And then that allowed the child's cortisol level to go to where they needed to be. My cortisol level was lower, and then sleep happened. So I think just an understanding of how those underlying physiological processes work. If we're
Hmm.
agitated, if our heart rates are up, if our heart rates are up, or our children's heart rates are up, the brain doesn't go to sleep.
Makes it really hard.
When you when you talk with parents, Mary, like I can't even imagine the amount of conflicting information out there that they're hearing on social media and TikTok. I actually can't imagine it because I hear it on a daily basis. But what are one or two of the biggest myths you find yourself like trying to help them understand and maybe trying to correct that just keeps is there a consistent pattern that you're hearing about, hey, this you'll hear this out there, but this isn't right?
I hear a lot of the only option to have my child sleep is to shut the door and see him in the morning, cry it out, right? That's a very common one. Especially with all the education that's out there, I don't know why that still is there, but there's a lot of polarizing information. That is not the only way to do something. So I feel like cry it out is a common one that I talk about a lot. That's not something you have to do. It is an option, yes, and if it works for you, great, but it's not the only option. And then I hear a lot of for toddlers, they're not sleeping well, a bed will fix it. That usually backfires really badly where they go okay for about a month or two and then they realize that they can leave. And once that
Freedom.
happens,
Freedom.
Yeah, they're like, oh my God, I can leave.
it's really hard to get a 2-year-old to stay in the room. The development just isn't there. And I've worked with kids that young, but it takes a lot from the parents to get the child to have that because you almost have to teach development that isn't there for them to be able to do it and work through it. So those are kind of the biggest ones. This is, well, I should move to a bed. I'm like, whoa, 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 we got a 19-month-old. Hold on a second. Let's think of different options before we just pull it. And, Montessori beds are beds. That's another misconception. Well, it's just a Montessori. I'm like, it's still a bed. If you take the front piece off of a crib and it's a toddler bed, that is a bed. So I get a lot of questions. Well, they're not in a big kid bed, they're in a Montessori bed. That is still a bed.
Oh, that's
And I
interesting.
like
I
that,
haven't
Mary. You
heard that
said,
one before.
yeah, I think teaching development that's not there is a really nice thing to hold on to because a lot of times we want our children to be at a certain stage of development that they're just not developmentally ready to do. We see that a lot educationally when students are in schools that are a little bit too revved up for them academically. They're just not at that developmental level of abstract reasoning. And in a similar way, they're not developmentally ready to self-soothe and maintain that space of a bed that's not a crib. I like the
Hmm.
concept.
When I even think about, what about the experts that are in everyone's lives? So pediatrician, psychologist, therapist, consultant. And when I think about it from licensing, I don't, as a licensed professional counselor, like, sure, we talk about like attachment and, we go through the studies of the cortisol, the study they did in North Texas over sleep and all that kind of stuff. But, for Dr. Dennison, the Pediatric Association, you guys have guidelines, right? On sleep. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't know your guidelines.
You want me to go through the AAP sleep guidelines right now?
Not line by line. Just give me like a 5 second.
I don't, Mary, have you looked at the most recent guidelines?
Have looked at them a couple months ago because I know they've changed a couple things, especially over the last couple of years, some significant ones, but I haven't looked at it in the last like month or two.
Yeah, because to your question, I mean, so there's the safe sleep guidelines, which are pretty clear, right? Like sleeping on
Hmm.
your back, non-inclined surfaces, don't put anything soft, no bumpers, all that sort of thing. But I'm trying, and then if you look, there's clearly like recommended sleep amounts, but
Hmm.
I'm not sure that there's a ton outside of the safe sleep and the sleep amounts.
Well, that's what
Mary, do
I'm
you know anything different
wondering.
than that?
Well, because I'm just thinking like from, different theoretical lenses, from a doctor, the number one concern is, keeping the baby safe, right? Like that's
Hmm.
the medical part of it. Versus like a therapist that may be more concerned about like emotional development or attachment. And just the differences between those two, because I remember going to my pediatrician and my pediatrician was like, just feed him and put him in the bed and close the door and say, see you in the morning. I had never heard of cry it out until that. So that's why I was asking, was that, I actually
Are you
thought that
saying
he
is
was
that
joking.
AAP endorsed?
I
I
mean,
don't think
I don't
that's
know.
AAP endorsed.
He did quote Ferber, so maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know, and if we go back to, I'm probably dating myself here, the Meet the Fokker series, the movies, like it was so great, but like they kind of referred to Ferber and Ferber Light and all that stuff. And actually, Mary, I think that Ferber got a bit of a bad rap because I don't think Ferber ever said close the door and don't come back. Am I wrong in that? I thought that he kind of was like the gradual cry it out. Is that fair?
Yeah, he was actually the first one that kind of was more of a response back, responding to the child. But he got pegged as you leave the child alone and don't
Right.
respond.
It's so
Poor guy.
interesting how his name became Close the Door and Don't Come Back, which I don't think was exactly fair to him.
And that's how I view him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean
I'm
you're right.
wrong. Oh my
That's what the
gosh.
message that got out there.
But yeah, all that to say, I think that, for our listeners who are getting all the conflicting information, whether it's from Instagram or even when they do quote unquote go ask the experts, that there is just such a huge variation depending on what the license is or a certification is. Which kind of goes back to your point of why it's so important to, meet your child and meet the parents at their part of the world to figure out that like it is not a one size all fits model. It just kind of reinforces that.
Quite frankly,
Comes
when
the
you're going to a
advice to that.
pediatrician and you're talking about sleep, a lot of that is going to come from their own experience, right, with their children and then what they've heard from their families. So I think you're exactly right. Like there isn't a one size fits all approach, and I think that's why the AAP has stayed away from any, more global than, hey, here's the sleep practices and, or sorry, the safe sleep practices, and here's the recommended sleep by age. Sorry, Matthew, what were you going to say?
No, just that you took that same point. So much of the advice, around sleep, especially, is based on the professional's own experience. And I think that it's challenging if that professional doesn't have their own children. And I would say enough children to understand that you're going to get different experiences, with different children. So I think there's that point that I would echo early. Mary, I was wondering, are there typical like a checklist that you go through with parents and say, okay, is there enough exercise? Is there enough sleep? What are the variables? So your sleep, your healthy sleep habits, hygiene, what's your typical list that you talk through with families?
I go through their age appropriate rhythm, right? I hate the word schedule because I feel like that pegs you, like you have to do that schedule. So I like more of a rhythm to the day, and make sure we're not keeping the kid, baby, infant, toddler, are we keeping them up too long? Not enough. Again, making sure the brain is able to hear the information we're giving it. So that's the first thing. The one that I talk about a lot that a lot of people know about, but don't realize how much it affects sleep, is sleep environment. Everybody knows the sleep environment checklist. Everyone knows it. They hear it, but why? Right? I talk a lot about darkness of a child's room. I've done this for 10 years. I've probably seen maybe 12 to 14 kids' rooms that were probably dark of what I would expect it to be. So I get a lot of pushback of, well, I want them to sleep everywhere. I understand that, but right now that's not working, right? We need to get them to a place that they can get good sleep and then absolutely be flexible. You can go out and have their nap at library, if you want to take your kid out, but they need to bring up the level of sleep they're having. But the darkness, especially during the day, we do not make melatonin at all during the day. So it's really hard for a child to fall asleep and stay asleep when it's not dark enough. Other things that I see that are kind of sneaky with sleep is the camera that watches our kiddos. A lot of them have green and blue pinhole lights on them. And green and blue are the worst for sleep. It tells our brain, hey, melatonin, I don't need you as much as we think we do. So eliminating those tiny little things can actually help some kiddos. And some, again, if you have more than one kiddo, you will also probably attest to this, that children respond differently to different things, right? Some kids might be bothered by it, but they sleep fine. They'll fall asleep. Some will just stare at it for an hour. So you really need to look at eliminating what is kind of bothering the kiddos. And also, as kiddos get older, the sleep environment changes. iPads come into the picture. Oh my goodness, how many people watch the Miss Rachel brushing teeth song? Drives me insane. I'm like, you're showing them a phone before they go to bed. Can't you sing it? You don't have to be pretty singer, just sing the brush the teeth song. So talking through like what is going to help them fall asleep, in it's unfortunate the iPad is becoming a big part of sleep for kids, and they're like, well, they won't go to sleep without it. I'm like, well, that is a reason they're having a hard time. So how do we keep it if you want it, but where do we put it? So I talk a lot about sleep environment because there's so many things that affect us in the way technology driven world we live in to help our kids sleep better.
So we need Vegas blackout curtains and a noise machine so it sounds like a jet is landing.
I love how you
It
said
works for me.
Vegas blackout curtains. I was like, we're going to Vegas and it's going to be
I
light
I
24/7.
know.
And
You
like,
know,
I
you
was like,
know.
hold on a second. I think Eve, you missed the point of the conversation. And Mary, I would just add on the tech piece, like for the people listening with older kids, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, but just the importance of the bedroom being tech free at night, like all together,
Yes.
especially as you get computer and phone. And when you get the argument from the older kid, I need an alarm clock. You're like, well, let me introduce you to an alarm clock, and
I
we all know
got
what
you
the
one.
algorithms are designed to do with our kids' attention. So I know I'm preaching to
I
the
think it's
choir here.
helpful for I think it's helpful for parents to know there's a part of our brain and our hypothalamus that regulates hormones based on light. And so when our eye
Mhm.
sees light and it goes into our brain, then you're messing up the circadian rhythm. So I think echo the rhythm, and I think that iPads, rooms that aren't adequately dark, it prevents the brain from kind of producing its own melatonin, which is the
Mhm.
hormone that's involved with sleep induction. And Mary, I think that's important for families to understand. On that
Absolutely.
topic, what do you think about melatonin?
Like the use of melatonin for
Yeah.
kids. I think it for neurodivergent children, melatonin is actually very helpful, right? Their brain does not produce it the way it needs to be done, but for normal use, I don't recommend it because it ends up making that brain the melatonin production harder, where they start actually waking up more. In my experience at night, because the brain, once the melatonin wears off, the brain's like, wait a minute, I don't have it. And it's kind of almost got to like, you got to re-jump start it again to go back to sleep. And they're up for an hour or two. So I have families, a lot of them that are using it before we work together. And I don't pull the plug on it initially because their bodies have been on it for a while. It takes a while for it to kind of come out. So we bring it, I say, talk to your pediatrician, talk to your doctor, make sure we're on the right page that we need to start bringing it down on top of the other stuff we are doing.
I like the distinction between, normal brain, neurodiverse brain. That's been in keeping with my experience. And so I think that's good for families to hear that the natural things, light environment, sleep, or do they have enough food in their belly? Those things are going to set the stage.
Okay, so if you're listening to this podcast, Mary, what ages do you work with, right? Because I mean, everybody just thinks about that first year, and then you get the horror stories of sleep regressions at 4 months, 8 to 9 months, 18
Yeah.
months. I don't have to tell you that those probably rank in the top of the Google and ChatGPT searches.
Oh.
So what ages do you work with? And then I guess talking about the sleep regressions, what do you think parents should know about it, and what works and what doesn't work?
I work with kids from newborns all the way to 5 years old. A little distinction though for newborns, I actually don't do traditional sleep shaping, sleep training until 4 months of age and older because they developmentally aren't capable of doing those things and they need a lot of different things that aren't there yet, right? They're going to be eating a ton. They need help falling asleep. Those are very different. So it will look different from the first 4 months. And then to your question on the sleep progressions, that 4 months is a big one where everything was going decently, right? And they now are going from only sleeping in 2 phases of sleep to all of them, and they were in deep sleep majority of the time. So when that changes, that's permanent sleep. It's amazing. It's progression, right? It doesn't feel like it because they are now sleeping in light sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, deep sleep. So they are waking up more. And it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction, right? As a parent myself, I've done stuff in the middle of the night. I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? I'm gonna have to like back myself back out of what I just did, but it worked. It made sense when I did it, but a lot of things get added that don't need to be added during regressions, where try not to knee jerk, especially as a first time parent. I did it with my first, especially, is try to stay consistent. Know that it's going to be off for a couple of days. Use your village, whatever that is, whether that's your partner, a friend, an in law, where they can help you on those nights, or postpartum doulas. There's newborn care specialists. There's so much out there resource wise that we can try to get help with, or kind of just know, ride the wave that it's going to be there for a couple of days, but not months. It's going to be about a week. But try to work through that and have a partnership with someone in the family, caretaker, to help you move through it. 8 month, that is separation anxiety. Again, you start seeing that it's harder for the baby to fall asleep. It could be schedule, right? So always look at schedule and that rhythm, make sure we're not having too many naps and that's why they're struggling. But that when they're going through separation anxiety, the more that we kind of stay when we need to probably mostly leave, kind of makes them like it brings that anxiety up, right? Where they're like, oh, they're leaving, they're not leaving, they're leaving. When you say, like, kind of what they would say, so when you say goodbye when you're leaving and to go to the car, even if they're upset, leave, right? Because they know that you're coming back. Kind of the same concept at night, that it helps to stay that consistent, even though, like, as a mom, that's so hard sometimes to walk away when someone's going mama mama, and you're just like, I love you, I love you, it's night night, you're safe, it's night night time. And I actually said that to my kids. I'm like, you are safe, it's night night time. And kind of walking out knowing that I will be there in the morning when they wake up in the morning, help bring that down instead of kind of coming back and forth. Helps with separation anxiety. In 18 months, I see a lot of kids trying to jump out of their crib around
Yes.
12 to 18 months of age. So a couple of things that can help is, if you have a crib that has a higher back and a low front, you can flip the crib around so the higher back is facing out. It looks crazy town, but it helps they can't get over it and shove the whole crib into the corner, and there's only one way out. That helps have them not try to get out, as well as a sleep sack keeps their leg in the bag for longer. It's harder to get out. If you have a gymnastic kid that can still try to get out after all of that, on the monitor, if you see them trying to get out, and I just say this, try to say it a little firm but quieter because the monitor is really loud. No, just to shock them out from doing it so they don't hurt themselves. Then come in, comfort them, right? They're a little upset, but they're not going to hurt themselves from coming out of the crib.
I like that.
The
Thank you.
common question is the frequent flyers between 12 and 4 in the morning that are 3 to 5 year olds or
Yes.
older, 6, 7, 8. I know there's a lot of factors that contribute to it. What are some of your strategies you offer families? Some families will let the child join the bed, some will make a pallet, different strategies I know for different kids, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I always look at what's the parent needs, right? Like if they are okay with the child coming into the bed and it's not affecting everyone's sleep, you don't need to change it. If it is affecting the parent's sleep and the child, right? Everyone's not sleeping well. Another option is they could just do the pallet, but let the child know when you come in, here's where you're going to sleep, right? Set that expectation before they come into the room because it's not going to go well at 3 in the morning. And then if you want them to stay in their room, I would try to put a framework around what they're supposed to do. Kids at that age learn visually and auditorily. You can't just tell them, hey, you need to stay in your room. It just it doesn't translate developmentally. So I want you to, with kids that age, make a sleep jobs chart. It's a visual chart of what they are supposed to do through the night. So say you have a 4-year-old, this is your routine. You take a bath, take a picture on your phone with them taking a bath. Next one, we take a picture of them brushing their teeth. The next one, we have a picture of them, someone reading to them. But make sure you write 2 books, 1 book, whatever your boundary is on books, make sure you put that on there. And the next picture would be them in their bed sleeping. If you don't have one on your phone, go snap one. And then that would be the next picture. The last one is an okay to wait clock that you could take a picture of it green. And what I want you to do is put that in chronological order, what we're supposed to do. And you're going to book and sleep with this. So you're going to do routine. Kids typically do the routine fine. It's when they're going to bed becomes the issue. But sometimes they don't want to brush their teeth. They don't want to stop reading books because it leads to bedtime. And that's separation, right? That can be hard. So what I want you to do is go through and say, babe, you did such a good job brushing your teeth, taking your bath, reading your 2 books. I'm so, so proud of you. Now I want you to tell your body to stay quietly in your bed until the clock turns what color? Let them scream green. You're going to go through the night. I can get more into detail what happens when they don't listen to it, but that might be another podcast. In the morning, we're going to go over it again and talk about all the things they did well and what they have to work on. Typically, they don't stay in their bed. So the terminology I like to use for kids when I work this age is your body forgot to stay in its room or in your bed. That's okay. I know you can do it tomorrow. Stop talking. They're going to stop listening. Just keep repeating it over and over. And then they're going to start internalizing. I need to tell my body. It's authority over myself. It's not my parents telling me I have to do it. And that positive feedback of I'm doing all these other great things. I just need to work on this one thing.
That's great. Thank you. It's
Welcome.
amazing how time flies when we're talking about such a cool
Oh,
subject.
wow.
Eve, do you want to do a little bit of real life scenarios?
Would love to. I think we kind of piggyback on that one and from let's say you have 2 parents that have different philosophies. One's okay with the kid coming in at 4 a.m. and getting in bed, and the other one's
Mhm.
like, absolutely not. So just total different philosophies. Um, a couple has been bed sharing with their 18-month-old since birth. One parent is ready to transition, the other is not. How do you help a family navigate that conversation in the transition itself? Um, and I have a particular person in mind because my advice was there's only room for one 18-month-old, so tell the man to grow up. So that probably was not helpful.
not the man, Eve. Come on.
Wow.
Clearly.
Oh, this is where we're gonna have the rumble. Okay.
So
That's
how do you help navigate that part of it?
We got to look at the whole family, right? The one parent wants one thing, one parent does the other. We've got to find a middle ground that's going to work. So most likely the baby's not sleeping well because parents are frustrated. They kind of can feel that after a while at night, even. So there are options if we do not want to put them into their own sleep space, right? Their own room. There, I work with a lot of families, not just in Dallas, everywhere, that they only have one room. There's other children like Manhattan. They ran out of room. The baby needs to be in the parent's room because there is no other space. We can create a space in the child's room or in the parent's room the child can sleep in. We got to get creative, right? If you have a big closet, the child can sleep in the crib there. Slumber pods are fabulous. If you don't know what a slumber pod is, I highly recommend you looking at them.
They're
But that's a
awesome.
good way to make a separate sleep space. We can use the bathroom that's attached to there. There's ways to keep the baby close, but not leave the room. So
So
I would try to,
compromise, compromise, compromise,
yes,
right?
yes,
I like
yes,
that.
absolutely.
What about this one? I actually had this question recently. Gosh, how old was she? Maybe 5 or 6.
Hmm.
And it was around that kind of 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning, coming into their room. And the question was, I mean, I'm personally going to wake up in an hour, so I guess I could go do laundry if I go and sit with her. But the question is, do I just let them make the pallet, sleep on the floor, or get in the bed, or do I actually take them back to the kids' room? And how do I navigate that part? Like which one? I know each family is different, but like
Yeah.
what at that age developmentally, what is the developmental need for that one?
What I normally see at that age is if the parent is not in the room, the child's not going to stay in the room, right?
Mhm.
If you've got a pallet in there, they're not going to stay in the room developmentally. The parent's left. So they're not going to sleep. So we're going to leave the room. I would say probably try to work on getting them back into their own room, right? Because they're not going to sleep there, and them getting up at 4:45 isn't good for them, right? Behavior for school, preschool development, they need to sleep. So I would work on getting them back into their room. Another kind of like sidebar is if you see a kid that's getting up around the same time every day, 4:45, 4:50, and I'm talking very specific time frames, not one day 4, one day 5, they can be stuck in a sleep cycle because something was there before, whatever that was. We were rocking to sleep. They were in bed with us. We were patting them to sleep. That their circadian sleep rhythm just kind of got stuck where it's at. And if you've noticed that, if you can, journal it for a week and you see, yeah, it's always 4:45, 4:50, there's something you can do called rouse to sleep that you can get in front of the sleep cycle and, in a way, put your foot on the sleep cycle and push it through without them waking up. And it has to be specific. They have to be waking up or within a 5-10 minute radius. And what you do is you go in 45 minutes before they wake. So if they wake up at 4:45, you go in at 4 in the room in the dark. And I want you to go up to your child and take your fingers and kind of just run your fingers from their shoulder all the way down the arm, just tapping it, or your nails to their wrist. And I just want them to pull away just a little bit, like, hey, mom, dad, stop touching my arm. Your intention is not to wake them, just jiggle that sleep cycle. And what you should see is that they can wake up at 5:30. That means that was a stuck sleep cycle. If they're still waking up at 4:45, 5, then it's behavioral. And now we need to work through that. But sometimes they can get stuck. And I recommend parents do that for 3 days. If they see the cycle go later, that was the issue. No amount of method will not get you out of it. It's just a stuck sleep cycle. So that is a way to push it through.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I know exactly who to send people to. Because I think my typical advice is no teenager wants to sleep with their parents. So, like that's not super helpful advice all the time. So now I got someone that does have the answers. Thank you so much for joining us today and this
Absolutely.
conversation.
You're welcome.
Mary, if you've got a parent who is listening to this conversation running on empty, hasn't slept more than a few hours in a row in weeks or maybe months, what encouragement would you offer? And then what are the top two or three things you want people to, our listeners, to remember or hear from this conversation?
Change is possible, right? You are, and even better, more, you are not alone. You are not alone. So many people, and especially I feel like in the where we are right now, there's a curated look to children and how our motherhood is supposed to look like. You are not alone. A lot of people struggle with sleep. So know that you're not there. There's people that can help you. The other thing is do something small. Do not take a whole watermelon and try to bite into the whole thing and eat it. You're not going to get anywhere. So if something that is palatable that you can work on, a sleep environment, even if you put black lawn trash bags on a window just to see before I buy expensive or buy anything for my windows, I just want to see if this darkness thing works. Black lawn trash bags taped to a window, you see progress. That's a win, right? That gives so much confidence to be like, oh, our child's capable. I know this can work. Now let's take another piece and try to incorporate it into it.
It's awesome. Thank
So
you.
helpful. This is
Uh,
great.
Mary, where can our listeners find you, follow your work, and connect with Rest to Your Nest?
Yes. So first place, Instagram is a good place. There's a lot of good knowledge there. You can just scroll and try to find what you're looking for. So it's just at Rest to Your Nest. And every Friday, I did started this 7 years ago. A lot of my families that I've worked with said, please don't stop doing this. Is I did a Friday Q&A on my stories every Friday. You can just sit there and learn, right? Even if you don't have any questions, you can just everyone just experiences the same thing. It's just when. So you can learn as well as you can put your own questions in, or you can ask a question. It's anonymous, and you can get some progress. That is kind of my give back to a place where I was struggle busing and nobody. I kind of just felt alone, and this is a great place to try to get some feedback to maybe help you guys get into a better place. My website is www.resttoyournest.com. So those are the two best places to find me.
That's excellent. Thank you. And we're so grateful for you being here and grateful for the work that you're doing. And I know you've helped a lot of my families when they've been in really difficult situations. And, everybody listening knows if your kid's not sleeping, you're not sleeping. And it's just a
Mhm.
whole cycle. So thank you for the good work you're doing and look forward to maybe we'll have to have part two where we unpack more of this. But thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys for having me.